unmet clinical needs through transformative solutions, healthcare innovation is critical.
However, turning an innovative idea into a product that actually benefits and reaches patients is never easy. That's where NHIC comes in.
As a driver of change, we are always asking ourselves, how do we bring this idea to the patient and people to make a difference that matters?
We have one more exciting session to go. Don't go anywhere, my friends. Let me introduce what's coming up next live on stage for the session, Transforming Healthcare Through Innovation. Now, our next panel will be exploring the role of healthcare innovation through the lens of precision medicine and also delve into the critical challenges shaping the future of healthcare. I invite you to stay with me as we do have some exciting conversation that you heard earlier on carry through before we go for lunch. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we will be, of course, welcoming a very distinguished panelist speakers to come and join us on stage in no time. And of course, just to let you know as well that we're so thankful and appreciative of the support given by DXD Hub and supported by CRIS. Please join me to welcome Dr. Pauline Erica Tay, Director of National Health Innovation Centre Singapore, NHIC, along with our panelists to come on stage right now. Let's give them a round of applause. Welcome, Dr. Tay. Thank you for moderating the session, Dr. Tay. So good to see you. We saw the video of you as well. We'll pass the mic over to you.
Thank you so much.
Over to you.
I love your mic.
Thank you.
Anyway, I'm Pauline, and I'm so glad to see all of you still here, even though it's lunchtime. So thank you. Give yourself a round of applause. So I'm Pauline from the National Health Innovation Centre. That's part of the Consortium for Clinical Research and Innovation Singapore, or CRIS for short. And I'm joined by three highly well-esteemed and also very handsome gentlemen during this talk on how do we transform healthcare with innovation. We're super excited and we're very happy to share this moment with you. Just a bit of a raise of hands. How many of you out there are from startups? All right. How many of you are investors? One. Okay. How many of you are in corporate innovation? None. One. Government? None. Hospitals? Oh, okay, good. So what are the rest of you? What do you do? Anyway, I'm glad you're here because this is the panel that if you don't know what to do, these three gentlemen will share with you, all right? So we actually, the title of our panel is Transforming Healthcare Through Innovation with a focus on precision medicine. Now, Singapore's venture capital environment has shown strong recovery momentum since COVID, with investors committing up to $3 billion of new funds year to date, despite what people call a VC winter. I'm not sure, maybe the rest of the world has winters, but in Singapore, we just have rain. All right, so in the past 5 years, we've actually seen a lot of huge fundraisers here in the biomedtech sector for Singapore. Notably, in biotech, we had a startup called Novacor that raised $45 million US. LA Therapeutics raised $57.5 million. Calio Therapeutics, a whopping $187 million. Now, can you beat that? On the medtech side of the house, we aren't too bad as well. So recently, one of our homegrown microRNA diagnostic company, Mirexis, got listed. It is now at a market cap of US $2 billion. We've also have a lot of up-and-coming ones. We have BioBot that raised $18 million recently and just got their robotic surgical tool approved by the FDA. We've got a lot of other budding ones like Avis, working with Cedars-Sinai and raised $10 million. And one very early stage one, Trixon, that raised $7 million. Along this innovation journey, you will always ask yourself how difficult or how easy it is. Let me tell you, it's never easy, all right? But there is a way to do it. And I'm glad that I'm joined today by three persons who have probably spent their lives in this, right? Bringing ideas from basic R&D, from innovation, through to clinical adoption, and then finally into the market. And all of them have their backgrounds in various aspects of life. They've gone through a lot. So we have Elia, who now runs as managing partner of Angelini Ventures. We are also joined by Michael from Memorial Sloan Kettering. He runs the digital program and in the Office of Entrepreneurship and Commercialization. And last but definitely not least, we have Paul, and he's actually the founder and CEO of MedTech Innovator, a global acceleration program. So instead of reading their very illustrious bio, which will take 3 days to finish reading, I'm going to hand it over to them to describe what they do. And they will also share with you their life experiences as we go along. So maybe we start with Elia first.
Sure. Thank you for having us here. It's a pleasure to be here and to share some of our experiences. So maybe if we have a couple of brief slides just to tell you a little bit about what we do at Angelini Ventures. So we are quite a global fund. We have people across 11 locations around the world. It's quite unusual. We have a very large diversity in the team. We're a 300 million fund. We invest usually in Series A, Series B stages. We were leading and co-leading with Kurma Partners the deal in Nuevocor that was just mentioned here in Singapore. So we're a proud investor in the local ecosystem. We're very hands-on, a very hands-on investment firm. We usually get quite involved in the board and try to help the companies we invest in. In the example of Nuevocor, we are working on the clinical development plan, on hiring people in Europe and in the US and turning it into a fully global company, but still with a Singapore heart. We're part of a fifth-generation industrial group, Angelini Industries, that brings a lot of industrial experience. So that helps us also to get quite deep into the subject matter. One of the other things that is quite interesting is that we do invest across the spectrum. So both on the very sciencey biotech side, but also on the medtech and digital side. And we have a portfolio that already represents that. And we also have no geographical boundaries, so we've invested across all 3 continents. So I think that makes us usually quite an unbiased partner that can see what's happening around the world and how that journey is shaped. So always proud of our team, so I like to put up the faces and the locations. Thank you for having us here.
Thank you so much, Elia. And you're now sort of half based in Singapore, right?
Yeah, I'm fully based in Singapore now. Yeah, I just took a stint for a couple of years out to help to build a fund where I was mostly living on a plane, but I'm back in Singapore.
All right, cool. So all of you know where to find Elia here in Singapore. Over to you, Michael.
Okay, thank you. It's great to be back. I lived in Singapore in 2009 and 2010, and I haven't been back in 15 years. And I actually just tried Kaya toast for the first time.
All right.
And somehow I missed that the first time I was here. I don't know. It's amazing. So I bet you never thought you'd be happy to see slides, but I think in this case it's kind of nice to see something besides just stare at us. So I'm the director of digital health at MSK. Essentially, I manage partnerships with companies for a large academic research center and hospital. And if you're not in New York or America, you might not know who MSK is, Memorial Sloan Kettering. We're kind of a massive cancer research hospital. So we have 500 beds, we have thousands of physicians, we have almost 2,000 clinical trials in oncology open at any one time. So we're in the top 2 or 3 cancer centers in America and potentially the world in terms of number of therapeutics that come out of the center, and as a number of people who are treated there, and in survival benefit as well. So that's MSK. And I just want to talk about what my office does. So I'm in the Office of Entrepreneurship and Commercialization, which is very relevant to this group here. Essentially, we do 2 things. We do kind of outside in, so basically working with companies like in Singapore that want to work with MSK, want to access patients, physicians, technology, or we do inside out. We have IP, we have inventions, we have novel AI auto segmentation, we have radiotherapy technology, we have clinical decision support, all kinds of things that use AI and technology in cancer. And so my group helps to try to license those out to bigger companies. So that's us in a nutshell.
All right, thanks, Michael. And last but certainly not least, Paul.
Hi, everyone. I'm Paul Grant. Nice to meet all of you. CEO of MedTech Innovator. So briefly, my background was as an entrepreneur. I started 8 different companies in tech, biopharma, and medtech. And then I became a venture capitalist for 12 years. So it was much nicer to have the money than always be begging for money as an entrepreneur. I loved being a VC. 12 years into it, I started MedTech Innovator as an accelerator for medical technology. There's 3 different programs. So just very briefly, there's MedTech Innovator, which is a program based on companies that want to enter the US market. There's MedTech Innovator Asia Pacific that are focused on the Asia Pacific markets. And finally, BioTools Innovator, which is life science tools, technologies enabling the biotech revolution, but not the actual drugs or biologics themselves. That picture up there is our cohorts from this year. So those are the 125 companies that were in this year's accelerator programs. And this is when we all get together in person in San Francisco to kick off our program. Just a little bit about us. So we are literally the world's largest life science accelerator, even though we don't do any drugs or biologics. 800 plus graduates of our program, including the ones that graduated yesterday at a separate program that we had. Our companies have gone on to raise over $10.7 billion in follow-on funding after MedTech Innovator. And what amazes me is 12 years into this, our companies are still in business. 93% of our companies are either still in business or they've been acquired with 60 acquisitions. And most importantly, we've got 500 plus products on the market, 460 or so approvals by the FDA alone. And just very briefly, so the medtech side of the business, it's for things like this you see up in here on the slide. It's the imaging technologies, the surgical devices, those kinds of technologies that are patient-facing or that might be consumer health. And on the life science tools side, that's BioTools Innovator. Those are technologies that are more like research products, manufacturing technologies, sequencing, diagnostics, etc. So if you're interested in those things, what we're looking for are companies that are generally early to mid stage. We have companies that have gone from, companies that apply that are literally at the pre-seed all the way up to companies that have $100 million that are going through our accelerator because we're a more mature product accelerator. Companies tend to have really sophisticated resources when they come to us, but they still have a million mistakes they're going to make, and our job is to make sure they don't make those mistakes. So lastly, just a quick QR code. If anyone's interested in applying for this next cohort in 2026, there's the QR codes for the 3 different programs. Enough about me, and back to you.
Thank you, Paul. And for those of you who didn't know, there is actually MedTech Innovator presence in Singapore. So those 3 QR codes that you scan, there is actually like a call in Singapore. So you can present here and still be chosen to go to the US, all right? I did forget about the fun fact. So Michael shared the fun fact about Kaya Toast. Ilya, maybe a fun fact about yourself.
Okay, fun fact. I love sailing, and my favorite thing is to go on a tiny rusty boat out of Changi Sailing Club around Pulau Ubin. So there you go.
Oh my God, okay. Living on the edge. And Paul, your fun fact.
My fun fact is that I flew here on Sunday through Dubai, coming from Montreal on 23 hours of flying, had an event yesterday all day long, got in bed last night, and still haven't been able to sleep since then. So I've been up now for about 36 hours.
Oh my gosh.
So that's my fun fact.
Okay, so that's not you talking, right?
No, this is I'm fast asleep. This is I'm actually dreaming right now.
I had a different fun fact queued up than the Kaya Toast. The last time I was here, I played Caucasian businessman in a soap opera in Singapore. I think it was called Penguin Father.
No way!
I love it.
I had a recurring role where I'd just sit in a boardroom and shake my head yes.
Wow, cool. He's a celebrity.
I love it.
Get his autograph after this. All right, so we're going to go into the real panel proper.
Yes.
But before we do that, we will give an opportunity for the audience to ask questions. So there's that pigeonhole. I believe that is the same QR code. If you were sitting here since the morning, just scan that and ask questions, all right? But while we wait for your questions, I'm probably just going to ask these gentlemen, and the one that's half asleep,
Yes, I'll be awake, I promise.
Some questions, all right? So we start with Michael, the one with the Kaya toast. So Memorial Sloan Kettering, or MSK for short, is a world-renowned precision oncology practicing hospital. Can you share a little bit can you share with us the journey in which MSK built this capability and how it is bringing hope to cancer patients in a new era of precision medicine?
Sure, and I think it brings hope depending on what type of cancer you have, unfortunately. So I think one of the most basic things we did is we decided to sequence essentially every patient that comes through. We do a biopsy of their tumor, and we do a 505 gene panel sequence to try to find genomic mutations that might help decide what therapy will work and what won't work. So what I mean by that is if you're in the 40 or 50 percentile that has an actionable mutation, then it gives you hope that you'll have a treatment. If you're not in that group, it's still a challenge, and it does point to all the work we still have to do to find solutions to cancers that don't have actionable mutations left. But that's really just classic precision oncology, understanding the driver mutations of your tumor, assigning therapies, modalities of therapy based on that, and also not giving people chemotherapy if we know it's not going to work. Why go through that toxic treatment? Try something else first instead. So that's kind of the main thing that MSK has done.
All right, but it's still like traditional, sequencing, not like AI tools and stuff.
It's a combination. So obviously the sequencing itself is classic Illumina sequencers. On the bioinformatic pipeline does involve some AI in the analysis and some of the automation, and then the processing and finding therapeutics afterwards with all that data. That obviously uses AI to try to find novel targets. We just kicked off a pilot with a company out of Hong Kong that is looking to find novel targets by mining this data from all the patients in gastroesophageal cancer.
Okay, all right. And Paul, I guess a lot of startups are very hopeful that precision medicine and all this kind of AI is going to bring them hope in creating solutions. So maybe in the companies that you've incubated or accelerated, have you seen those that innovative companies that potentially could be successful or are already successful, and what are those critical success factors?
Sure. Well, okay, that's a great question. So critical success factors, I think there's like a classic list of things you would say, like in diligence, that we look for in companies. I was an investor, and what we do is look for those kinds of things. But there's a couple of critical things, especially in the precision medicine space, that I'll talk about. So we've found that companies that are successful have teams that are coachable. So that is an extremely important part of this. So you can check all the boxes in terms of technology, but what we've found is that if you have an entrepreneur that thinks they know everything and comes in and pitches you and is kind of combative when you challenge them on their assumptions and saying like, no, I think what innovators often believe that investors want to see somebody who really knows everything, but it's not true. The investors are actually hoping that they're going to add value, in fact, if they're a sophisticated investor, and they want to know that you know what you don't know. So I think some of the best companies know what they don't know. That's a big part of it. And specifically in precision medicine, we've had amazing companies over the years that I would say are more on the med tech and digital side than the therapeutic side. And they tend to do things like I'll give an example. We have a company in the Alzheimer's space that's called Synaptica. It's one of my favorite companies right now, is in this year's program. Synaptica is actually developing a precision medicine approach using neuromodulation. And I found that closed loop neuromodulation is one of the most exciting areas of precision medicine, because just like pharma, you can actually dose a therapy that's totally and completely designed to that patient in real time. And so they've done an amazing job of designing clinical studies that look just like you would do for pharma. They've run 2 large clinical studies and been able to show they can actually improve the cognitive diagnostics that you would normally see, that you want to see, without going after amyloid plaque. So with a totally device-based solution, it's amazing stuff.
Right, and that made them investable? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. They've raised capital and they're doing great.
Wow,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And maybe Elia, you can share a little bit from your perspective as well as a VC. And I mean, you didn't start as a VC, you were in basic R&D. You also worked in large pharma. what would you think is necessary to bring all these really early, research discoveries out into clinic and market? What would make them successful, and what would make them investable? Just to follow on from what Paul said.
Yeah, besides agreeing 200% with what Paul just said, interestingly, probably about 20% of our portfolio, not by chance, is in neuromod, neurostim. So we're very bullish about that space because it's
and coachable too.
Only coachable founders.
Okay,
yes,
good.
only coachable founders. So look, my personal trajectory, I think, was very much because healthcare is complex, and I felt that unless you really understand the basic science, the clinical setup in terms of operations, not just clinical research, and then the business angle of pricing, reimbursement, investability, very hard to build something in healthcare. So I would say the first thing is you need patience, and that means patience as an entrepreneur, which means coachability, because you really need to take all the inputs and feedbacks and keep growing on them probably for your entire life, to be honest. Patient capital and the right syndicate. It's very tough sometimes for first-time entrepreneurs who are, of course, understandably very excited at the first investor that says, yes, I believe in you. It's a beautiful moment. But if they're stuck 3 years later with an investor that cannot follow on with capital, that doesn't have the right industry relationships, that can be a very tough spot to be in as well. So it requires patient capital around the table, long-term view around the table from everyone, from the entrepreneurs and the investors. The other thing that was always there but is become incredibly important, somebody was sharing the other day a very sad and unpleasant mathematical model of how few companies are likely to make it based on the amount of capital that has gone in versus the acquisitions, etc. I don't think it's that dire, but I think you have to be extremely open and interested in inputs from potential industry acquirers or partners, because unless you know what they're actually drafting out to be their strategy in the next 5-10 years and who would they like to buy, you might build a great company that nobody wants to buy, and that when it tries to IPO is very far from any kind of real perception of market need. So I think those are ingredients that are quite important, and I would say some of our top performers really have those ingredients. 3 years before their clinical trial was even enrolling, they were already thinking about speaking to all the industry leaders. They were already having people on their leadership team that understood market access, pricing, etc. One very, let's say, technical example of this is companies in medtech that think that the best way to solve a medical problem is to create a new, very cool device. And I was talking to a head of Philips M&A who said, if they only understood that the most important thing is that it fits, like physically fits into our monitors or into our, into the hospital setting. And when I was at Dana-Farber, we had startups that had come up with great algorithms, but they wanted us to have an iPad for each patient. So you have to also fit in the clinical workflow. So really listen a lot, have a lot of patience, and bring it all into your product.
Yeah, I think that kind of segues into our next section, right? I work with all the public healthcare institutions in Singapore as well. And I think the last thing anyone wants, like a nurse wouldn't want to download another 10 more apps to run a new, algorithm, right? And you've got to think about how much they actually have to do. They're very tired, right? So the last thing I want to do is work around your new technology in order to use it. So I guess the next question, we're talking about precision medicine, but it's again a confluence of, technologies across the years, right? Right place, right time, right technologies. And I think this is almost like where we are at that convergence point, right? Where compute power is strong enough, there's AI now that's consumer-centric, and then we have all these amazing, asset discovery. How are we going to sort of bring that together so that we can bring precision medicine to bear? Right? I think there's a couple of things that, I had conversations with this gentleman before that there must be some basic fundamental stuff that needs to be set up, right, before we can glean the benefits of precision medicine. So maybe Michael first, since you are running sort of the digital program and finding ways to commercialize that at MSK, what would you say are some of the essential fundamental data, digital infrastructure, how do you integrate with EMR, working with Epic, for example, where we're experiencing that in Singapore, where we're all trying to use Epic.
Yeah, Epic is a unique challenge. It's a massive I guess I don't know if it's officially a monopoly, but I don't want to say it's a monopoly, but it does dominate the marketplace in America. And so we migrated to Epic just this year, and we had a situation where we had a lot of apps, like things that would predict mortality or things that would predict certain outcomes that were homegrown, but Epic also had one. And so we had to make the decision, do we support our own technology, or do we just go with Epic, even if Epic is slightly worse? And in most cases, we would stick with Epic because the same reason that you just said, that you don't want to have remember a password for another portal. Even if it's better, no one's going to go to a password locked portal in the office. So for us, it's really all about having things work in the workflow itself, and in this case, working with Epic or working with the APIs that are in the workflow. And so that's, no matter how many inventions we see, and we see hundreds of them a year where people invent ideas that are interesting and might be successful, if there's not a conception of how it's actually going to work, like who's going to pay for this at the hospital, which doctor or nurse is going to actually use this, it's just kind of a unique kind of party trick, but it's not going to go anywhere, and we can't as a hospital be installing random apps all over the place. And we actually also have something called the AI governance that we put in place. So any invention, if it mentions AI, which is kind of everything at this point, has to go through basically a board. One, you just let them know that you're working on it, so we don't have shadow ideas coming through the hospital. And then also it looks to see if it's introducing bias, if it's introducing risk, so a model drift that could actually harm patients in the future needs to be tracked and monitored. So we classify AI solutions based on whether they're low risk or medium risk or high risk, and whether they impart bias or not into patient treatment. So that's been pretty successful to have this kind of AI governance process put in place.
And Paul, I'm sure, as you mentioned just now, in all those, was it 900 companies that you incubated, the ones that were in the digital, they're sort of at the forefront, right? How do you see when these startups work with, say, hospitals, what's the basic digital infrastructure that still must be in place before you can bring in these new startup technologies?
Well, I think we already talked a little bit about things like Epic and those systems. I think the most important thing, and it was mentioned maybe even on the prior panels, is payment, is the biggest issue. So you can do pilots at institutions. There are pilots all over the place, but we always call it like death by pilot. Like the companies burn through all their cash supporting a pilot that doesn't turn into a meaningful contract because there isn't payment that's really been adapted in our system. So if you're out there and you're innovating, we call it payer-based innovation, where you look to see where there's payment or where there's potential for payment, and then innovate around those edges. Because the problem is, it can take literally 7 to 8 years from the time that a medical device is approved until it has reimbursement, broadly speaking. And on the digital side, we haven't even really adapted, at least in the US, we really haven't caught up to the way, someone talked about this before, we have episodes of care, we have acute care, you get, a procedure, you get a billing code, and you can bill for that. But if it's an adaptive digital technology that's continuously monitoring a patient, which is kind of what precision medicine, at least on the digital side, is all about, it's not just about that one acute thing that you can bill for, it's a continuous thing. And we haven't really delivered figured out the value propositions as a healthcare system in the US. So whether it's Medicare or private payers, they just don't have the model yet. So unless it's an academic medical center or somebody wants to pilot, you come in with these digital solutions and people go, that's really interesting. When there's payment or a value-based model that makes sense, or something that you can actually prove the lower costs, better outcomes, et cetera, then we'll buy it. And the problem is, we're not doing really great at that as a system yet.
Yeah, I think it's the same here in Singapore. We suffer from pilotitis.
Yeah, pilotitis. Nice. I like it.
All right, and I guess same for you, Ilya. I think you've had some experience working with Singapore's healthcare ecosystem through Health Catalyst, right? And of course, your current role in Angelini. What are some of the current gaps in Singapore you see that we need to address before you can truly bring in precision medicine and enable it, in this digital era?
Yeah, so I think I'll take a slightly unusual angle at this question, and those who know me know that it's something I'm quite passionate about. I think Singapore has a very unique opportunity in the next 5 to 10 years. We face a new world that clearly has a shifting balance in many ways, right? Geopolitically, financially, etc. One of our colleagues at McKinsey released a report that is showing an estimate between 30 and 60% cut on EBITDA from US measures alone. And it's not tariffs. Everybody talks about tariffs. Tariffs was like 5% of that. The rest is all the different pricing measures, etc. Now, I see that as actually a very unique opportunity. One of the things that personally, as somebody who's passionate about patient impact, frustrated me the last 20 years, is I was privileged to participate in some of the world's, innovations like genome sequencing for cancer patients and, all of those cell therapy, gene therapy, all those things. But then what really saddened me is that it reaches basically 20 capitals in the world, right, where there is an academic hospital that has all of that, the staff and the reimbursement and so on. Now we're living in a new world where startups, I think, have the possibility and the opportunity to realize it's going to be a multilateral world. It doesn't quite matter whether your customer is in Japan, in Italy, in the UK or US. It's going to be a little bit more harder across the board. But if you actually build across several countries the right, commercial partnerships, relationships, and of course acquisition, potential acquirer pipelines, you can still succeed. So I think Singapore can play a unique role. We've had a lot of learnings. We don't need to talk about them, I think, today in this ecosystem. But now, if you look at Southeast Asia, if you look also at the pace of innovation in China, there is a really interesting opportunity for companies to have the ambition. And if you ask me what the ingredient that we need to really work on is the ambition, right? To say Singapore can become a true hub for the region where, when it comes to precision medicine, we will be able to have the right technologies, the right, of course, data infrastructure. I think the previous panel talked about it, to be able to be the excellence center for the region. I think that's an important one.
All right, okay. We do have a question from the audience, and I think that three of you can answer it in your own ways. The question is, what are the major barriers to translating United States developed innovations to Asia Pacific and vice versa? So I think maybe the first two gentlemen would like to take the translating US innovations to Asia first.
One thing that jumped out also when Elia was speaking is in the US, we can't transfer data to China and some other countries. We can't transfer over 10 individual patients' data if it has genomic components because of the bulk data rules that came into effect. It actually didn't come from Trump. It came from Biden's time, surprisingly enough. But so that's a huge hindrance. It's an advantage for Singapore because you're in Asia-Pac and you don't have that limitation. But it is a challenge when we work with Chinese companies because we can't do any kind of precision genomic project because we're not allowed to transfer genomic data because there's massive penalties. So that presents an opportunity for Singapore in that sense.
Is there a way to access like de-identified data?
It doesn't matter. I mean, this is de-identified data, and even that is barred from being transmitted.
So you think that's the main barrier to bringing innovations that kind of work in the US to this region?
That's just one very obvious hurdle that we don't know how to get around right now.
Right, right. Paul?
So, one of the big things we find for companies that are in the US, have developed for the US, and now are trying to commercialize in Asia is the lack of regulatory harmonization. So they come in and they have to redo a lot of the clinical work, they have to redo the evidence generation, and they just aren't funded for it. So then we try to seek out programs or opportunities where there is local funding in some region. But again, the question is, like, does it make sense for them to do that economically and maybe even as a distraction? Then you have all the distributor issues. If you want to set up distributorships in all these different regions, there's all these contractual things that these startups are just not equipped to deal with and navigate. Even large corporates struggle with this. So, you just don't have a lot of time from a distributor in a local region. They've got lots of other things they're carrying in their bag, and how do you get priority with them? Who has the registration for? So, if you have a distributor and you give them rights in a particular region, and then they register your device, which happens in many cases because people don't read the contracts, and then they decide it's not working out, you can't sell your device in another country because the other person already has the device registered. There's all these crazy complexities that, again, if we could work to maybe have some harmonization, I think Singapore could be a great hub for that.
Do you guys, I mean, as an accelerator, you help the
We
startups
do,
with this?
absolutely, yeah. The Asia Pacific program that we run is specifically focused on companies from anywhere in the world that want to commercialize in Asia, and we tackle that exact thing.
All right. And Ilya, the reverse. You said from Asia to the rest of the world.
Yeah, so I also had the experience from the US here when I built the Health Catalyst office, and I would add one ingredient because there are all those, let's say, detailed specific challenges. But actually, it was very interesting. When I set up the office, I had noticed that their international efforts were done, mothership to country, right? So the mothership trying to do it as a sales activity, and then you only see the challenges. And we had failed quite brutally, spectacularly in the UK before I had come. And then for Asia Pacific, I said, no, we need a person who's been here 30 years and basically empower them like a local CEO and let them be on top of how you localize the entire thing, the strategy, who's going to be your first customers. So that's, I mean, it's not advice to, possibly local companies, but it's to how to, I think, culturally make sure that when you land in Asia, you allow someone who actually understands Asia to tell you, this is different, this is how we're going to do it here. I'm going to start from, this is, I'm going to start selling here, I'm going to make this partnership, and then I'll work my way up because they see it as their own P&L. So I think it's a detail, but it's a very important detail where I've seen a lot of failures. When it comes to, Singapore to the world, one, pitch I'll make, especially in this, current situation is, don't be too dismissive of Europe. I think we were all, including Europeans, we're very much used to the idea you build something in your country, whether it's France or Japan or Singapore, and then you have to figure out the one relationship that matters with both investors, acquirers, commercial partners in the US, and that's all you need because that's going to bring you rightly going to bring you to an exit. Now, there is actually a pretty sizable market in Europe that you can sell to, that you can be acquired by, but it had been overlooked quite a lot in Asia, and I see a lot of interest now. Like we have, we know quite well probably 30 to 50 small, medium enterprises in Europe that don't make the news like Eli Lilly or Pfizer, but make $1 billion acquisitions, which is, I think, fine for a local startup, right? So I think that's another part that I would really start thinking about, which, in which Europe, and each European country has its facets, in terms of how easy it is, for example, for a medtech to come in or a digital or a biotech.
All right. So, in summary, I guess you've heard from these three wise men. In order for us to really bring in some of these meaningful discoveries in precision medicine, some basal, fundamental things need to be set up first. And also for those of the solution providers to want to succeed in doing this, you have to understand some of the things that you need, right, to work with the clinical workflows in the hospitals, to also think global when you start, right, because you have to tweak your solutions as you go from country to country. And you probably can't work alone. You actually have to work in partnership with people who have different expertise. All right, before we wrap up, there is actually one question, and I apologize we won't be able to cover it, but the speakers will be around and you can approach them right after this. But before we wrap up, I'd like to ask all three of them to give you sort of a take-home message that if there was one precision medicine innovation we could all work on together, like one global, impactful precision innovation, what would that be? Maybe we start, Paul.
Well, we talked a little bit about data transfer, and I would say if there was a way to actually, like all the AI stuff that, when I think about the medical devices, the digital technologies, they depend on great data to be trained for personalization, and we don't have a really great way of being able to get data from country to country across borders. If there was a way to do that, that would be incredible. It's a major geopolitical thing we have to deal with, but some kind of ability to get data from country to country across borders so we have the best AI possible. That would be great.
All right, Michael?
I think trusted clinical decision support is going to be the future. So people are already using Gen AI to diagnose themselves. Doctors are using it as well. But we need to get to a point where people actually trust the results. It's regulated in a way that you're not fearing that it's drifting or how do you pick which one works. So you need to have a kind of a governmental regulated state where clinical decision support or AI that makes decisions for you about your care is actually usable.
Like some guidelines and a framework, right? Okay. And Elia?
Yeah, I think the sort of the next multi-billion-dollar market that there is a really interesting opportunity to build is democratization of precision medicine. With the lowering cost of drugs coming out of China, with the pressing needs of the emerging economies, populations that have the same causes of death as any developed nation now. Democratize all future therapies will be precision therapies, and so we need to democratize them.
It's like how we democratize like ride-hailing, right? Healthcare will be like this for us in the future. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Please join me and give a round of applause to this amazing, esteemed speakers, Paul, Michael, Elia. Thank you very much, all of you, for staying, sacrificing your lunch for us. Thank you.
And also, Dr. Tay did a tremendous job. Can we also show our appreciation and love for Dr. Tay with a round of applause? Thank you. And like what Doctor has said, it's time to feed you as well. We, of course, would like to invite our panelists to, of course, join us for lunch over at the area. Of course, we will see you downstage. If you have a few quick questions that you want to grab them for, they're going to be here for just a few short seconds. Thank you so much. It was so invigorating. Thanks for all the stories. Dr. Tay, you're always amazing. Thank you so much. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as we are making our way to lunch, I do have some, of course, helpful information to navigate the space right here. Please be back by 1:50 p.m. to join us in the next track. It is going to be on quantum, and we are very privileged to be joined by, of course, the CEO of Quantinuum, joining us for the keynote session that's opening from 2 p.m. for the quantum tech track. As you can tell, the doors are already open for you to enjoy lunch over the other side. Now, this is level 1 where lunch is served. I want to tell you that you also have lunch served at level 3. So if you want to, of course, maybe walk around the exhibition a little bit and interact with some of our vendors here before making your way for lunch, there's also lunch waiting for you at level 3. With that, I want to bring your attention to the health masterclasses continuing from 2 p.m. It's going to be at level 3 Cassia main rooms and also at the adjacent masterclasses. Now, we love to see you back here at 1:50 for more quantum tech track. And of course, enjoy your lunch. Bon appetit.